Uranium's steady gains over the last 12 months have turned into a bull run after Kazatomprom, the world's largest uranium producer, said earlier this month it would adjust its 2024 production targets due to a shortage of sulfuric acid as well as delays in developing new deposits. It follows a similar warning from Cameco, which said in September that challenges at its Cigar Lake mine and Key Lake mill would have a negative impact on its 2023 production figures. Joining me today to discuss is Greg Cochran, Managing Director of Aurora Energy Metals. Greg, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be back again.
Greg, do you think these developments are mere speed bumps, or have they exposed inherent weaknesses in the uranium supply chain?
That's an excellent first question. I guess, unlike most, I bring quite a historical perspective to the market. As a student, originally dabbling in what is this uranium market back in the 80s to business development in the 90s and the 2000s, and then to actively involved in the development of uranium mines in Australia. I permitted Honeymoon, and I ran the joint ventures in Kazakhstan for Uranium One as well. So, it's call it a 35-year perspective on what goes on in uranium and the nuclear space. And in addition, I guess, as a postgraduate after my mining engineering, I also did mineral economics. So I've got this energy economics angle to it as well. So it fascinates me. So when you talk about a temporary speed bump versus a historical perspective, you get a very different picture. Sadly, for uranium and development of uranium mines, speed bumps, hiccups, production problems are nothing new. Just a couple of examples. Cigar Lake, one of the world's great uranium ore bodies, was discovered in the 80s, but was only commissioned in 2014 after multiple production issues and really complex technical issues. Bringing it closer to home, when I was with Uranium One, what had been seen as the flagship operation, Dominion in South Africa, failed. It's not as if they got it up and running, it failed. Honeymoon, we mothballed early. Prices, yes, but also issues that I believe Boss have now resolved, and we're looking to them to make a great success of that. The old Paladin, both Kayelekera in Malawi and Langer Heinrich, very rarely hit their production targets and also suffered under significant delays. And even BHP at Olympic Dam and Western Mining before. Do you think Olympic Dam such a huge deposit? Surely they would not have problems, but they themselves have had these problems. So it just goes to show uranium mining, not easy. And it's also even more difficult when you're under pressure to deliver when the market is so tight. And then, wouldn't necessarily say corners are cut, but perhaps we go into making these development decisions without necessarily understanding some of the technical complexities which may arise.
And the apparent supply jolts have been a boost for uranium prices, which recently hit a 16-year high of more than $100 a pound. Does that buoyancy offer any advantages to junior uranium players looking to get new projects off the ground?
Yeah, I phrase it slightly differently. A 16-year high, it's actually only the second time in history that the spot price in uranium has been above $100 a pound. And I like those words as opposed to, the second time people think, well, this is something that happens regularly. No, this is really unusual. So yes, there's no question that, these supply issues have impacted, on the price, and therefore all the juniors and Cameco and Kazatomprom see this as an opportunity. But I see it broader in that higher prices are mutually beneficial. And that's kind of a weird statement. You say, how can it be beneficial for our customers? And it's beneficial because the last thing that can be allowed to occur is have a reactor run out of uranium. The production of electricity from nuclear reactors is cost effective, unlike what some politicians would have us believe in Australia. It is cost effective, it's clean, and it's safe. But the reality is it costs a huge amount of money to build these things in the first place. So high capital, low operating costs. And uranium is a small part of those operating costs, typically around figures, 5%. So our utilities that are generating electricity from nuclear desperately need that uranium. And with all the tightness in the market, we need a powerful trigger to get out there and unmothball existing older mines or build new mines. So what we're seeing now is it's not this once in a lifetime boom, it's understanding that this is a fundamental incentive price that is required to trigger and incentivize new production to make sure that not only existing reactors are fueled, but that we have sufficient uranium production for the new build. And the new build forecasts are now off the scale.
And Greg, some market observers predict uranium prices to climb even higher. To what extent do you think this run is due to the public's shifting perception of uranium as an energy source?
Yeah, I think most of us believe that it will climb higher. In fact, I was a panelist at a panel discussion at two or three conferences last year, and I think the most recent one in November, I'm on the hook. I think I said, I can see $150 before the end of this year. So watch the space. We'll see if I was correct. And I wasn't the highest in the room as well. So, I thought, oh, here I go out on the limb, but not at all. So there's multiple underlying causes for this rally, and I guess undoubtedly one issue or one relevant point is the public shifting perception on nuclear, and it's just that people are recognizing that there is no credible, and I stress the word credible, path to decarbonization without nuclear. And that's what most of the people in the world are realizing. For example, nuclear in the US its public support is at an all-time high. Even in good old Australia, where we have a ban on considering nuclear power in the EBBC Act. But the reality is that support for nuclear is above 50% in Australia. So, that is definitely a very powerful signal to the powers that be that this is the way to go. However, apart from the decarbonization angle, there are other things at play, other factors at play. And perhaps, I could mention three. The first one being energy security, obviously. And Germany is a case in point, a wonderful example of how not to do it. Hey, we're going to turn off, I think, 30 perfectly good nuclear reactors because we're going to rely on Russian gas and our own dirtiest of dirty brown coal and lignite. 150 coal mines, and they're bragging about their renewables strategy. Plus, of course, when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, and times are tough, and obviously Russian gas isn't so available nowadays because it's not the thing to do, you rely on imports of, guess what, nuclear-generated electricity from France. So energy security, number one, is very important. Then, as we've discussed already, the ongoing production shortfalls are a real issue. But I want to put that into context. It's not like lithium, where there was this price boom for short-term concerns and also projections on long-term demand. What we have here in uranium, for example, for the last 2 years, shortfalls in production deficits was, I think, 34% last year and 25% the year before. So this is real existing demand that's not being supplied. And that brings home the earlier point about you can't allow a reactor to not have uranium fuel. It's got to run and run and run 24/7, 365 days a year. So those production shortfalls are an issue. And we've spoken, I guess, on the fringes about the third issue, but not mentioned the world's geopolitical tensions. And that's the third issue, that since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the world has woken up that when it comes to nuclear and uranium, we operate in a bifurcated market, and it's East versus West. And, I dearly love and appreciate and respect the Kazakhs, and they're not part of the Russian invasion, but they suffer under the challenges of getting their product out through Russia. And yes, they'll talk about the alternative route via the Caspian. And they'll say, she'll be right, mate, but actually that's not necessarily the case. So those three factors, in addition to, uranium and nuclear makes sense, are driving and giving us this additional momentum in the market.
And with the ongoing push for more sources of green energy, clearly there is a need for additional uranium projects and processing operations. What are the main hurdles junior uranium companies need to overcome to get there?
Yeah, from an Aurora perspective, I'd immediately say funding, because, we're at a stage behind some of the longer standing existing exploration and development companies who have benefited from the boom since 2016. So funding is important, and it's important because you not only project finance to ultimately develop your project, but you need sufficient funding along the way to maintain momentum in doing the project work that's required to get you to the point of the development and the investment decision. And referencing those production missteps and development missteps historically, if you're well funded, you can avoid those because you've got the luxury of the funding to be able to do really good, solid technical work to then make a sound development and investment decision. So funding is key. The other one, and this is universal in mining, but even more so in uranium, is permitting. You just have to look at WA and Queensland to say what a farcical situation this is, just because uranium, we ban it. It makes absolutely no sense at all, unless you're just trying to win a fringe vote against the Greens. And so permitting is an issue, not only from a political perspective, but then from a competence of the regulators. And this is an issue in the US, where the Nuclear Regulatory Committee has lost a lot of its skill set. And so we do envisage it'll take time to permit Aurora, but at least it can be done. At least it's not banned, and there's not going to be an about face in the US to say we're going to ban uranium mining. So that's important. And the third really important thing is people. Some of the companies are very well positioned as they busy looking to, building up their well, particularly the mothball mines like Honeymoon and like Langer Heinrich in Namibia, where there is an existing skilled workforce that know about uranium mining and there's first-hand knowledge in Langer. Perhaps not so much at Honeymoon, but of course South Australia is a very well-run, very good mining jurisdiction, and has ISR in situ recovery experience and expertise. You just have to look up the road at Beverly 4 Miles. Amazing asset. Not many people know about it because it's private, but it's a wonderful asset that's being run so well and producing millions of pounds a year. So they can tap into that. But for the rest of us, we've got to go out and find the people. And it's the people that are suitably skilled and have a lot more hair than I have and darker hair. So that's the challenge, is finding the trained, skilled people to be able to build and to run these operations.
That was Greg Cochran, Managing Director of Aurora Energy Metals. Greg, thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure, Chris, anytime. I love talking about the subject.